The rain began not as a gentle drizzle, but as a curtain, a solid wall of water. It fell between the world and the old house on the hill. Elara watched it from the attic window, a square of grey light in the dusty gloom. She'd inherited Cliffside House from an aunt she'd met only twice, a woman whose letters were filled with elegant script about roses and the cry of gulls. The movers had brought her boxes, but she hadn't the heart to unpack. Not yet. The silence of the place was too thick, broken only by the drumming rain and the distant, mournful boom of the sea. It was in this silence, on the third day, that she first heard it. A faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It wasn't the pipes, and it wasn't the wind. It was too deliberate, too measured. It came from behind the tall, oak-panelled wall of her bedroom. For a week, the sound was her only companion. It came at odd hours, dawn, dusk, the dead of night. She'd press her ear to the cold wood, and the thumping would stop. As if whatever it was knew she was listening. The local villagers offered no comfort when she ventured down for supplies. The old postmaster simply shook his head. "The house has its moods," he'd said. "Best leave it be," his eyes crinkling. But Elara, a graphic designer used to solving visual puzzles, found the unseen puzzle more compelling than frightening. She began to map the sound. It was always in the same area, behind the paneling. One afternoon, the rain let up and a weak sun broke through. Following the thumping, she ran her hands over the wood, searching for a scene, a button, anything. Her fingers found a minute carving a tiny gull in flight, almost indistinguishable from the wood grain. She pressed it. With a soft pneumatic hiss, a whole section of the paneling slid back, revealing not a closet, but a passage, narrow and dark, smelling of stone and salt. The thumping was louder now, a frantic, desperate thump, 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 her heart hammering against her ribs. Elara grabbed a heavy brass candlestick from the mantel, more for courage than as a weapon, and stepped inside. The passage led down a steep, circular stairwell carved into the stone of the cliff itself. The sound of the sea grew to a roar. At the bottom, a low door stood ajar, light flickering from within. She pushed it open. She was in a sea cave. The entrance was a jagged mouth open to the churning grey ocean, and the floor was damp sand. And in the center of the cave, a man was tied to a thick wooden spar, probably flotsam from a shipwreck. He was young, with dark hair plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, wide with terror and relief, locked onto hers. The thumping was his heel, banging against the wood. Elara stood frozen, the candlestick heavy in her hand. He was gagged, but his eyes pleaded with her. The mystery wasn't a ghost or a faulty pipe. It was a man, a prisoner. She rushed forward, dropping to her knees in the sand. As she fumbled with the wet, stubborn knots, 1,000 questions exploded in her mind. Who was he? Who had put him here? And why had the house led her to him? The knots gave way. He pulled the gag from his mouth, coughing, gulping in the salty air. "Thank you," he rasped, his voice raw. "I didn't think... the tide." Elara helped him sit up. "Who did this to you?" He looked at her, his expression a complex tapestry of gratitude and a deep, unnerving wariness. He opened his mouth to speak, but his eyes darted past her, towards the entrance of the cave. A shadow fell across the sand. Elara spun around. A figure stood silhouetted against the grey light of the cave mouth, blocking the exit. It was a woman, tall and dressed in oilskins, a length of rope coiled in her hand. As she stepped forward into the dim light, Elara recognized the sharp, familiar features, the elegant, looping handwriting that had invited her here. Her aunt's face, cold and composed, stared back at her. "Elara, darling," the woman said, her voice soft as velvet over steel. "You were always so good at solving puzzles. I was counting on it."